Mystery exploration. Darkness. History. Creepy apparition. Scary. Welcome to Cursed Stories. Hello, Night Wanderer. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell. The shadows appreciate it. Tell me where you're watching from and what time the nightmares begin. Now lean in. These aren't just stories, they're warnings. Let's begin.
The guy moved in late last Saturday night. I know because I woke up near midnight to the screech of metal on metal. He'd rammed his U-Haul into the dumpster outside my bedroom. Not bumped. Not nudged. Rammed. I sat up in bed, the sound still ringing in my ears like a scream. From my second-story window, I watched him step out to inspect the damage. He was tall. Absurdly tall. Almost as tall as the U-Haul, and when he rested a hand on his hip, the space between his arm and chest looked big enough to fit a whole person inside. I couldn't tell what he looked like. The streetlight caught only glimpses, the outline of a square jaw, the faint gleam of pale skin, the shine of his white button-down. But even from a distance, something about him felt off. I considered going out to help him. Just say something neighborly. But my gut twisted into knots. A voice inside whispered, "Don't open that door." I went back to bed, telling myself he'd probably appreciate me pretending I hadn't seen anything. But there was a knock at my door early the next morning. You can't imagine the jolt in my chest when I looked through the peephole and saw the same man, or at least the same shirt. From my angle, I could only see him from the chest down. Broad, unmoving, still in that starched white button-down. He was just standing there at 6 a.m. on a Sunday, silent. Did he see me watching him last night? Was he mad I didn't help? I almost didn't answer. But a part of me, the polite, socially anxious, people-pleasing part, told me I'd have to face him eventually. I took a breath, readied an apology, and opened the door. He stepped back, grinning wide. No teeth. Just gums. Blackened lips curled back in a smile too big for his face. His skin was an ashen gray, like someone dipped him in wet cement. His eyes didn't move. Didn't blink. "Let's hang out," he said, in a high-pitched, sing-song tone. No emotion, just the words. Like a glitchy cartoon from an old VHS tape. Friendly. Excited. Rehearsed. As a 6-foot-tall man, I had to crane my neck to meet his eyes. And when I did, something washed over me. It was warmth. Nostalgia. I was back in my childhood home, the smell of cookies baking in the kitchen, sunlight through the windows, my mother humming. I wanted to say yes. I fought it. I knew I didn't know this guy. I knew. But part of me did. Or wanted to. I stood there, teetering in and out of the doorway, fighting this invisible tether pulling me toward him. "Not right now, Mikey," I said. I blinked. Did I just call him Mikey? I hesitated, then shut the door. Locked it. Deadbolt, chain, all of it. Back in bed, my heart pounding, I whispered to myself, how the hell did I know his name? But like a dream, the certainty faded. Maybe I'd made it up. Just blurted the name out. I told myself it didn't matter. I just needed sleep. I woke up hours later, sunlight leaking through the blinds, and for a few minutes, everything felt normal. I lay there staring at the ceiling, vaguely remembering something strange, but my brain hadn't pieced it all together yet. Then I remembered the door. The knock. The name. Mikey. The moment I thought it, my stomach turned. I tried to shake it off. Played video games, rewatched a season of Friends, scrolled through garbage on my phone. But the unease didn't lift. It clung to me like wet clothes. I chalked it up to Sunday dread. I've always hated Sundays. That slow, quiet tension, like something's creeping up behind you and you can't turn fast enough to see it. Maybe I just hate my job more than most people. At 5:30 a.m. Monday morning, another knock. I froze. No one knocks at 5:30. Not unless something's wrong. I held my breath. Waited. But it came again, louder this time. Reluctantly, I opened the door. He was standing there, both hands out, palms up like he was offering some sacred gift. On them sat the most beautiful pastry I'd ever seen. Light and golden, fluffy like a cloud, glazed with chocolate, peanut butter, and caramel. It practically shimmered in the porch light. I didn't even think. I reached for it. The moment I touched it, memories flooded me. I was in a warm kitchen, seated at a wooden table. Mikey, taller, younger, smiling, stood at the counter frosting a perfect cupcake. He brought it to me like a birthday gift. I took a bite and nearly cried. He was my best friend. I'd known him forever. He was safety. He was home. And I loved him. But something twisted under the memories. A tight, sharp fear. Like eyes were watching me from every angle. Like I was being studied. "Let's hang out," Mikey said, reaching for me. His voice snapped me back. Too bright. Too cheerful. Too wrong. I stumbled backward and slammed the door shut. Breathing hard, I looked down at the pastry still in my hands. Except now, it was just bread. Two mismatched slices slathered with crude chunks of peanut butter and jelly. Not even a sandwich. Slabs of jelly smeared on the outside, dripping onto my wrist. Like it was made by someone who didn't understand how food works. I dropped it. At work, I couldn't focus. The algebra textbook I was editing might as well have been written in a different language. My head kept looping back to Mikey. To that strange, too sweet memory. A memory that didn't belong to me. Because I knew I'd never met him before. But I remembered him. I remembered sleepovers, road trips, Christmas mornings, kisses. It was like my mind had been hijacked and stuffed with a childhood that never happened. I made a decision. No matter what, I wouldn't answer the door again. I wouldn't talk to him. Wouldn't even look at him. If I saw Mikey, I'd run. But when I pulled into my driveway that evening, he was already waiting. He didn't knock this time. He was just standing there in the parking lot like he'd been waiting all day, unmoving, arms hanging at his sides, head tilted slightly like a curious dog. His grin widened when he saw me, gums stretched taut, lips dry and cracking, eyes locked onto mine before I could even slam the car door. "Let's hang out," he said, beaming. I turned to go. I meant to turn, to walk away. But I didn't. Instead, the moment I looked at him, my chest filled with light. I felt warm. Safe. Happy. Like stepping out into spring after a long, gray winter. I smiled back without meaning to. He didn't move his body, not really, but somehow, he leaned in, just his head lowering toward me, bending forward without bending his back. His face was too close. His breath didn't smell like anything. His eyes, I couldn't describe them. Not really. But looking into them made something ancient stir in me. Something not mine. And then the memories came. I was small. A toddler. Laughing. My feet kicked at the sky as I soared forward on a swing set, and Mikey, tall and proud, stood behind me, pushing me again and again. His hands were huge on the chains. It was my birthday. I was blowing out candles. Mikey lit them one by one with fingers the color of cigarette ash. His long yellow nails curled over the lighter like claws. We were on a baseball field. He was my coach, patting my shoulder with encouragement. He was my best friend. He was my brother. He was my teacher. He was everything. And then we were older. I sat in the backseat of my car, sweaty palms pressed against the upholstery. Mikey leaned in. I kissed him. His lips were dry, cracked, cold. But my heart thumped in my chest like it meant something. It meant love. "Let's hang out," he whispered, eyes still glued to mine. I took a step forward. My body moved without me. But somewhere deep inside, an alarm screamed. Not in words, not even in thoughts, just a soundless, primal howling. Something feral clawed at the inside of my skull, trying to tear me away from him. I imagined going into his apartment. I imagined sitting on his couch, laughing, hugging, falling into those fake memories like they were real. Then I imagined screaming. Bloody, endless screaming. Pain like I'd never known. A void with a voice. I ran. Something in me broke loose. I turned and sprinted. I didn't look back. I slammed into my apartment and locked the door behind me. My breath came in gasps. I heard nothing outside. No knock. No footsteps. Just silence. Then it came, a knock. Soft. Precise. I grabbed my phone with shaking fingers and dialed 911. I told them there was a man who kept knocking. That he wouldn't leave. That I was scared. They said they'd send someone. I sat by the door and waited. Every second dragged like an hour. Then came the cruiser's headlights. I saw them through my window. And when I peeked through the peephole, Mikey was still there, waiting. I didn't move from the door. I crouched there, one eye pressed to the peephole, just watching him. He didn't knock again. Just stood there, smiling. Still. Silent. Familiar. The cruiser rolled up slow. The lights clicked off. One door opened, and the officer stepped out, casual as anything. He didn't look tense. Didn't have his hand on his holster. He wasn't scanning the area like someone who'd been told a neighbor was being harassed. He just strolled up like he was meeting an old friend. "Tommy," the officer said, voice bright. "What's going on, man? Long time no see." My heart dropped into my stomach. "Let's hang out," Mikey said. The officer smiled. "Of course, man. I really can't thank you enough for last time." I blinked hard. Last time? Through the peephole, I watched them walk away together like they were brothers, like they'd known each other forever. Mikey's impossibly long arm draped around the cop's shoulder like they were teenagers heading into a party. They disappeared into his apartment. The door closed. Then the screaming started. I backed away from the door and covered my ears, but it didn't help. The sound was wet. Not just loud, but alive, like something was being torn and devoured and sucked dry while it screamed its last breath. It echoed through the vents, through the walls, through my bones. Then, silence. I didn't sleep. I just lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling, praying for the sun. In the morning, 2 new officers showed up. I told them the truth, or part of it. That someone was harassing me. That a guy kept knocking and wouldn't go away. That I hadn't seen the officer again. They knocked on every door, even Mikey's. I didn't hear screams this time. Just laughter. Happy, relieved laughter. The kind you only hear at airport reunions and surprise parties. Like someone had found something they'd lost for years. Like coming home. I haven't left my apartment since. It's been a week. I got fired. The food's almost gone. I keep the lights on all day and night. I moved the couch in front of the door. I haven't opened the blinds. I know I'll have to go outside eventually. But what if he's there? What if he says it again? Right now, I know he's dangerous. I know none of the memories are real. I know he's something else. Not human, not alive, not anything that belongs here. But what happens when I see him? Will I remember? Will I feel safe? Will I smile? Will I follow him in? Or worse, will I already have? Because some nights I wake up with crumbs in my bed. Bits of peanut butter on my fingers. A taste in my mouth like burnt sugar and rotting fruit. And sometimes, I think I can remember swinging. And laughing. And kissing him back. Everything started with a flyer. Looking for participants. Paid sleep study. $2,500 compensation. 1 overnight stay. No known sleep disorders. Call to apply. I was unemployed, behind on rent, living off microwave noodles and fear. Easy money just to sleep? Hell, I didn't even read the fine print. I showed up at the address, a medical-looking building off campus that smelled like disinfectant and quiet regret. A woman in scrubs greeted me. Too friendly. Too still. Her badge said Dr. L.A. She led me down long hallways lit with flickering fluorescence, into a small white room. 1 bed. 1 camera. Wires. Electrodes. Air so clean it felt dead. Lie down, she said. You'll feel a little pinch. Then, sleep. That's when everything started to go wrong. I dreamed of a facility. Not that facility. A different one. Bigger. Darker. Deeper. The walls weren't white. They were a dull, fleshy pink. Something organic pulsed just beneath the surface, like muscle. Or membrane. I walked barefoot down a hallway. The floor was warm. Other people were there too, some in hospital gowns, others in regular clothes. None of them spoke. They just stared straight ahead. Wide eyes. Open mouths. A man in a lab coat walked up to me. His face moved too fast, flickering like an old film reel skipping frames. His voice sounded like static pushed through clenched teeth. Welcome to level 1. I woke up. Or at least, I thought I did. The room looked the same. Same bed, same camera. But Dr. Ellie was different. Her smile was wrong. too wide. Like her skin had been stitched into place by someone who didn't quite understand how faces were supposed to work. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, tilting her head far too much. The angle was unnatural. "I'm done. I want to leave." I shot upright. She blinked once. Then again. But this time, the eyelids moved sideways. "You're not finished yet," she said. Every time I woke up, I was in another layer. Each room felt a little less real than the last. The ceiling rippled like water. The walls breathed. In one version, the bed had veins. In another, the camera blinked at me, literally blinked, like an eye. They told me I was making progress. That I was doing well. "No subject has ever made it this far," one of them said. His voice dripped like molasses, slow, syrupy, and wrong. That's when I realized they weren't studying how I slept. They were studying how I dreamed. And I was sinking layer by layer, deeper into their world. That's when I started seeing the others, the real ones. People who'd also signed up for the sleep study. One girl, Sasha, told me she'd been there for weeks. Maybe months. "They keep us dreaming," she whispered. "They feed on the transitions. That flicker between sleep and waking. There's energy in it." I asked how we could wake up. She laughed, a horrible, empty sound, like something rattling in a dry throat. "You can't. Not unless you reach the bottom. But no one knows where that is." One night, if you can even call it night here, I found a mirror. It was cracked. Blurry. But I saw my reflection. My skin was turning gray. My eyes sunken. Something was moving under the surface of my neck, twitching, like a worm squirming just beneath the flesh. I screamed. The mirror rippled, then showed me another version of myself. Smiling. Clean. Perfect. Behind her were the dream researchers. Their faces stretched like melting wax. Mouths open in silent howls. I shattered the mirror. It bled. That's when I started fighting back. Refusing to sleep inside the dream. Walking endlessly just to avoid the transitions. They punished me. One level down, they took time away. No day. No night. Just a dull gray light pressing into my skull like a migraine that never ended. In another layer, I heard voices. My mother. My first girlfriend. My own voice. All whispering behind the walls. They knew my memories. They knew my fears. And they used them. That level broke me. I collapsed on the floor, sobbing. Whispered, "Please? I just want to wake up." That's when it happened. The chief investigator. He didn't wear a lab coat. He wore my face. But not exactly, just enough to feel wrong. The teeth were too long. The smile never moved. The eyes were glassy, blank, no pupils at all. "You're doing well," he said, in my voice. "You're getting close to level 0. "What's level 0? I croaked. "Wake up," he said. "If you survive." Then he touched my forehead. I screamed. I fell. Crashing through layers, like ice cracking beneath my feet. Flashes of rooms. Colors. Memories. My 5th birthday. My grandfather's funeral. My first kiss. All of it peeling away, layer by layer, as if I was being stripped down to a raw, dreaming core. And then, silence. Darkness. One word burned into my vision like static etched on a dead TV screen. Level 0. I opened my eyes. I was back. Back in the original unit. Bright lights. The real Dr. Ellie. My clothes neatly folded. A clipboard next to the bed. "You've been under for 7 hours, she said, smiling gently. "How do you feel?" I broke down in tears. Relief flooded through me like rain after a long, cracking drought. I grabbed her wrist. "It was horrible," I said. I thought I was trapped." She handed me a cup of water. Said the brain can play strange tricks during sleep. Hypnagogic. Nested dreams. Lucid cycles. All perfectly normal. I signed the forms. Took the check. Left that place as fast as I could. I ran all the way home. That night, I tried not to sleep. Every time I shut my eyes I saw them. The researchers. My reflection. My own face, rotting. I paced around my room. Drank coffee. Chewed my fingernails until they bled. But eventually, I passed out. And I woke up in a room I recognized. A bed. A camera. A clipboard. The door opened, and Dr. Ellery walked in. Only this time, she didn't even bother wearing skin. Her face was a rotting mess of tentacles and teeth, eyes blinking like barnacles growing out of her skull. Her voice didn't come from her mouth, it came from everywhere. From inside my ears. My teeth. My bones. You reached level 0, she said. But you never left. I screamed. Clawed at the walls. Tried to wake up. Tried to move. Tried to breathe. Nothing changed. The room stayed still. The clipboard now read. Subject, Ethan Cross. Sleep study, phase 3, simulated awakening. Response, highly compliant. Status, core integrity breached. Extraction, denied. Retention, indefinite. I wasn't dreaming anymore. This was real. A reality they built. A prison made of belief. And the worst part? Every time I think I've woken up, there's another clipboard. Just now, someone knocked at my apartment door. I answered. A man was standing there, breathless, holding a crumpled flyer. Hey, he said. Did you do that sleep study thing? His hands were shaking. I can't wake up. I smiled, my mouth opening wider than it should. Come in, I said. Let me tell you how it starts. There's a place in the desert with incredible ecological diversity called a sky island. Specifically, the Sky Island is a 9,000-foot mountain surrounded by scorching, lifeless lowlands, its forested slopes rising abruptly from the desert floor like a green fragment of another world, drifting above the heat haze. It's the only place in the continental US you can find jaguars. Of all the time I spent looking for animals there, I never thought something would be looking for me. I would have loved to see a jaguar. But I wasn't hunting predators. I was there for reptiles, venomous, scaled, elusive creatures that most people avoid but I couldn't resist. Dozens of species of rattlesnakes alone slither across its elevation zones. Colored lizards, spiny-tailed iguanas, Sonoran whipsnakes, each adapted to the dry, stony ridges or the cooler piney heights. I loved them enough that I took several days off from work, drove across 2 states, and burned half my savings just for a chance to spot them in the wild. The drive was relaxing at first. Long stretches of dry, cracked earth lined with creosote and towering saguaro cacti flicked past under golden sunlight. Those dusty, open roads gave me time to think, though now, I avoid them whenever I can. Especially at night. Especially alone. Usually I'd make this trip with some friends. My herpetology professor first told me about the area. A couple old college buddies shared my interest, and we made the pilgrimage once or twice before. This year, they all had plans. I told myself it would be meditative, solitary. And it was. That might have been the problem. The road I was on stretched for miles, twisting through scorched valleys, my car and the stars the only lights for hours. Scraggly creosote bushes drifted in and out of my high beams like ghosts, their twisted limbs casting strange shadows. I drove slow to avoid the toads and snakes that ventured onto the pavement at night, hoping to soak in the residual warmth. Jackrabbits darted out occasionally, spooked by the engine's purr, just long-legged flashes of fur vanishing into the dark. During the day, this road might get a couple trucks or park rangers. But between midnight and 3 a.m., you could die out there and no one would find you for days. That kind of isolation forces your mind to unspool in unpleasant directions. You stop thinking about cell service or your car's radiator and start thinking about what else might be watching, unseen, from the dark. I hit the hazards and stepped out to help a spadefoot toad across the road. I couldn't stand the idea of one getting pancaked. Outside the car, the air was cool against my skin, and the desert was hushed, crickets singing like faint static in the background. The road was darker than I remembered. The moon was hidden behind a wall of clouds. I slipped on a nitrile glove and gently scooped the little toad up, admiring the strange softness of its skin, its camouflage colors that shimmered green and brown beneath the moonlight. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures, zooming in on the brilliant eyes, like tiny emerald marbles. It didn't move, just blinked slowly, waiting. I wondered what it thought, if it even had thoughts like we do. Then I heard a rustle. It was barely audible over the engine, just a faint scrape or shift in the creosote brush on the far side of the car. I froze. The kind of frozen where every part of you listens, not just ears, but muscles, skin, the space in your lungs where breath should be. Something was there. Something bigger than a rabbit. I told myself it was nothing. Just a fox, maybe. But the sound wasn't curious. It was deliberate. Methodical. Like it didn't care that I could hear it. I placed the toad in the grass and stepped backward quickly, my shoes crunching dry gravel. I didn't run. I don't know why. My curiosity always outweighs my fear, until it doesn't. Then, as I reached for the car handle, a jackrabbit exploded from the bushes, bounding across the road in two massive leaps. I jumped, adrenaline lighting my chest on fire, then let out a small laugh. I realized I'd been holding my breath the entire time. I do that when I'm scared, hold it like a diver underwater. That night, I helped a few more creatures across the asphalt, tiny rattlesnakes no thicker than a pencil, lizards with blinking orange eyes, each movement a thrill. But I kept glancing over my shoulder. The desert didn't feel empty anymore. It felt occupied. And it was only going to get worse. It was nearly 3 a.m. when I made the decision to take one last lap around a road winding through the foothills. I told myself it was the last time I'd get to be out here for another year, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something rare, something unforgettable, was waiting out there for me. I just didn't know what kind of unforgettable it would be. The farther I drove, the more the road seemed to decay. It narrowed and fractured, the shoulder vanishing, until it felt like my tires were skimming the edge of something more ancient than asphalt. I rolled the windows down to let in the night air. Cool, still, and strange. There was a scent on the wind I couldn't place. Not the usual mineral tang of desert stone or sagebrush. It was older, wet, almost, like the smell of something buried for too long. Up ahead, a whippoorwill burst into flight from the roadside, its white wing spots catching my headlights for the briefest second before vanishing into the trees. I smiled at that. You hardly ever saw one. But then something shifted. All the crickets went silent. Not gradually. 1 second their high chorus was droning, and the next, it stopped. Like someone threw a switch. My first thought was that a predator was near. A hawk. An owl. Maybe a jaguar, silent and watching. But even those wouldn't silence everything. I slowed the car. Just enough to listen. Then the engine died. Not coughed. Not sputtered. Died. Instantly. Lights off. Dashboard dead. No power steering, no AC, just the sound of rubber tires gliding to a halt on loose gravel. My foot hovered over the brake, and I felt that bloom of cold spread out from the base of my spine. It was the kind of fear that doesn't start in the chest or brain. It comes from something deeper, instinctual, animal. I reached for my headlamp on the passenger seat, flicking the button. Nothing. Dead. No click. No red light. No flash. My fingers trembled as I pulled my phone from my pocket. The screen stayed black. Everything. Every piece of modern life, every buffer between me and the rawness of the dark, dead. That's when I knew it wasn't a coincidence. One of these things failing? Sure. Batteries die. But the car, the lamp, the phone, at the exact same time? That wasn't random. That was intentional. That was orchestrated. I sat still, not blinking, not breathing. My eyes adjusted slowly. Pale sand between sage and brush came into focus, then distant outlines of cactus and tree. The sky still gleamed with stars, but now it felt wrong, flat, like a painting. The outline of the mountains was just barely visible. But even those started to feel off, unnatural in their stillness. Then I heard it. The faintest crunch. Footsteps, but slow. Measured. Like something walking without concern. I didn't turn my head. I didn't move. My eyes searched the edge of my vision for movement, anything, until they landed on the top of the ridge. At least, I thought it was the ridge. Something had moved up there. A domed shape. Smooth. Curved like the crown of a head. I blinked rapidly, trying to adjust, trying to process what I was seeing. Was it a bush? A trick of moonlight? But then it moved again, rising. No, not rising. Approaching. The shape had been at a distance. That was why it had looked small, like it was part of the mountain. But now it grew larger, creeping forward until I could make out its size more clearly. My stomach flipped when I realized the mountain hadn't moved. The figure had just been that close. Something black, solid, rounded, was standing beside my car. I wanted to scream. I wanted to lock the doors, to do anything. But I couldn't. I was frozen. Trapped. The fear had seized every joint, every tendon. And then, without any sound, click, my doors unlocked. The plastic switch on the driver's side door popped up under my arm. On its own. The kind of gentle, automatic unlock that happens when you put the car in park at the grocery store. Casual. Expected. Not like this. My hand shot to the lock and slammed it back down. I held it there, knuckles white, fingers trembling, pressing with all the force I had. My breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. My lungs burned, and the air felt heavy, tainted. On the other side of the glass, something pulled at the handle. Not violently. Not in a panic. It was calm. Experimental. Like someone who'd forgotten they locked the door. Like someone who had every intention of opening it again. And then, it leaned closer. The shape outside the window stood motionless, just inches from the glass. I couldn't see a face, not exactly, but I knew it was looking at me. I could feel it. That indescribable, primal sensation of being observed, not casually, but with purpose. It was short. No taller than a small adult. But nothing about it felt human. The posture was wrong, too still, too balanced, as if it wasn't affected by gravity in the same way we are. And the darkness around it seemed thicker, clinging to its edges like smoke. My headlights had been off for minutes, and yet it remained silhouetted, outlined just enough to be seen, but never seen clearly. I held the lock down with my full weight, fingers slick with sweat. The handle jiggled again, slightly harder this time. Still calm. Still insistent. Still wrong. I opened my mouth to scream, and that's when I made my second mistake. I inhaled. The air was different now, thick, sweet, and chemical. Like burned plastic and crushed flowers. Something artificial, acrid, and cloying all at once. My throat closed instantly. A sharp pain stabbed through my sinuses and behind my eyes. It was as if I'd snorted electricity. I coughed hard, once, then again, before I could clamp my mouth shut. My head swam. Outside, the thing remained unfazed. It didn't startle at my coughing. It didn't flinch. Instead, it cocked its head slightly, as if curious. Observing. Then, something moved on the other side of the car. My eyes darted right. There were more of them. At least 3, maybe 4, walking slowly around the car, black forms blotting out patches of stars as they passed. No faces. No features. Just silhouettes shaped like children drawn by someone who had never actually seen one. Their proportions were off, arms too long, torsos too still. One of them reached a hand up and rested it on the passenger window. 5 fingers. But too thin. Too jointed. Each finger moving slightly, independently, like they were tasting the glass. Not tapping, not knocking, stroking. I started hyperventilating. My vision swam. My headlamp still wouldn't turn on, my phone dead in my lap, the car useless. I thought about honking the horn, flashing the lights, anything, but nothing worked. It was as if the entire vehicle had been disarmed. Inside, it felt like the air pressure was dropping. My ears popped. A low hum vibrated through the steering wheel, through my bones. I could feel it in my molars. Not a sound, but a sensation, deep and resonant, like standing too close to a jet engine just before it ignites. Another click. This time from the back. The rear door lock on the passenger side popped up. I hadn't touched that one. No hesitation this time. My body moved before my brain caught up. I lunged across the seat and slammed it back down, nearly falling over the console. As I did, I caught sight of a figure crouched just outside the rear door, inches away. This one was different. It was closer. Too close. Its head was tilted forward, almost pressed to the window. I still couldn't see a face. But there was something there, shifting beneath the darkness. Like smoke moving under skin. Pulsing slightly. It raised a hand and tapped the glass once. A dull, soft thought. I froze. And it did, too. For a second, we were locked in stillness, both holding something sacred and terrible in place. I couldn't tell if I was crying or sweating, but moisture poured down my cheeks and neck in warm rivulets. I reached for the keys. Not because I thought the car would start. Just because I had to try. My hand brushed them, and the engine turned over. Lights flashed. Dashboard blinked. The radio sparked back to life with a burst of static before I shut it off. The figures were gone. Vanished. Not fled. Not run. Gone, like smoke from a blown-out candle. 1 second there were hands on my windows, black bodies outlined against the stars, and the next, only silence and a warm breeze through the open crack of the window. I sat frozen, engine idling, for what felt like hours. Then I started driving. I didn't think. I didn't plan a route. I just drove, faster than I should have, down that broken road, tires kicking dust into the silence. The stars above blurred into a smear of cold light as my vision tunneled. Every twist of the wheel felt like it could tip me into some deeper part of the desert, into some place I wasn't supposed to find. My hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to make my knuckles ache, but it felt like the only thing anchoring me to reality. I didn't remember the turns I took. I didn't remember the drive back. The next thing I knew, I was parked outside the motel. The clock on the dashboard said 4:37 a.m. I was slumped forward over the steering wheel, my head resting on the leather, the seatbelt still buckled across my chest. I didn't remember arriving. I didn't remember the road, the exit, the gas station, the last 10 miles. Nothing. Just that 1 second I was alone on that godless stretch of desert road, and the next, I was safe. Or I thought I was. Then I smelled it. The ammonia sharp scent of urine. It soaked the front of my pants and the seat beneath me. My skin was clammy, cold. Shame burned in my stomach, but it was quickly overtaken by something worse, an understanding. This had not been a dream. This had not been a moment of irrational fear. My body had reacted to something real. I sat there for a long time. The motel's flickering neon sign buzzed gently, casting sickly red and pink pulses across the parking lot. I could see the window to my room, curtains drawn, untouched since I'd left. The silence around me was heavy. Not peaceful. Not calm. It was the kind of silence that holds its breath. That waits. I eventually got out of the car, shaking legs carrying me to the door. I stripped my clothes in the bathroom and showered for an hour, scrubbing my skin until it was raw. I checked every inch of my body for marks, bruises, needle punctures, anything. There was nothing. No blood. No scratches. No sign of trauma. But I didn't feel unhurt. I barely slept. The motel room felt wrong, the lights too bright, the walls too thin. I kept expecting to see movement behind the curtains. Kept hearing faint clicks behind the walls. Kept imagining I hadn't escaped, only been let go. And that word, let, bothered me. Because I don't think they wanted to harm me. Not exactly. If they had wanted to, they could have. I was completely helpless, alone, disarmed, unable to scream, unable to move. They could have taken me, killed me, torn me apart. But they didn't. They watched. They tested. They studied. I think I wasn't the predator that night. I was the specimen. And maybe that's worse. I've had time to think since then. Too much time. I've gone over every moment again and again, trying to make sense of it, trying to force some kind of rational answer into a story that defies all logic. People ask me if I was drugged, if I had a psychotic break, if it was sleep deprivation or carbon monoxide poisoning. I've heard all the theories. None of them explain why my car, headlamp, and phone all failed simultaneously. None of them explain the identical reports I found online. Other desert travelers describing silhouettes in the dark, memory lapses, a humming sound just before blackout. None of them explain the dreams I've had since. In them, I'm back in the car. It's always just before the moment, before the locks click. But this time, I don't hold my breath. This time, I inhale when I'm supposed to. I open the door. I step out. I walk into the brush. And the figures step aside, as if I belong with them. I wake up soaked in sweat, heart racing, throat raw from screaming. But worse than that, I wake up smiling. I don't know what to do. I don't even know who I am anymore. There's something inside me and it's not mine. I can't sleep. Can't think. Can't even look at myself anymore. This isn't some cry for help. This isn't fiction. This is me leaving a record, because if I lose everything, and God, I am fucking close, I need someone to know the truth. Because I should be dead. And in some ways, I think I am. It started a year ago. I was 32. Healthy. Normal. Working in a tire factory. The days were long, the hours sucked, but I was alive. I had someone who loved me. I had a little apartment. I had routines. I had a heartbeat. Until I didn't. Cardiac arrest. Out of nowhere. No warning. No tightness. No pain. Just lights out. Face first between two massive OTR tires. My co-worker said my lips were blue by the time they got to me. Paramedics shocked me 3 times on the floor. I flatlined. 6 minutes. No oxygen. No pulse. Then, somehow, I came back. I remember flashes. Needles. Screaming. A nurse crying. The voice of a doctor whispering, he shouldn't be here. But I was. They said I was lucky. A miracle. 1 in a million. I didn't feel like a miracle. I felt wrong. Like something got rewired on the way back. I spent the next 9 months waiting for a donor. My heart was too damaged. They said it was like driving a totaled car. It might move, but eventually it had failed. I lost everything during those 9 months. My girlfriend left me. It's funny how fast someone you thought loved you will vanish the moment you stop being useful. The moment you become a burden. I wasn't sleeping anymore. My skin felt too tight. I jolt awake thinking my heart had stopped. Sometimes, I wished it would. I prayed. I'm not religious, but I prayed. Not just for healing. No, I prayed for something. Anything. For it to end. One way or the other. Then one night, the phone rang. They had a match. A heart. Perfect fit. No complications. It was happening now. I remember being wheeled into the OR, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. The anesthesiologist smiled and said, "This is your second chance." He had no idea how wrong he was. I woke up in a nightmare. I was freezing. Not cold. Freezing. Like I'd been pulled out of a frozen lake. I was drenched in sweat, but my fingertips were blue. My teeth chattered so hard I cracked a molar. My jaw locked. My chest ached, not from the incision, but from something colder behind my sternum. The nurse smiled. "It's the anesthesia," she said. "It'll pass." It didn't. It never did. Even now, I'm always cold. Doesn't matter what I wear. Blankets. Heaters. Hot showers. Nothing helps. It's like something inside me doesn't remember how to hold heat. The cold lives in my bones. In my chest. In my heart. Then the dream started. Always the same. Fluorescent lights. A white-tiled room that smells like bleach and meat. A chair bolted to the floor. Leather restraints cracked with age. Rust-colored stains on the tiles. Someone strapped in. Male, female, young, old, it changes, but they're always gagged. Always wide-eyed. Always trembling. And then there's me. Not me now. Not the scared, half-broken shell scribbling this out. Something inside me. Something standing over them. Watching. Circling. Smiling. There's no sound in the dream. Just this low electrical hum, like a wire buzzing through concrete. The lights flicker. The air tastes like copper and wet stone. In the dream, I'm always holding something. A scalpel. A pipe. A pair of shears. A hammer. A torch. Tools of pain. Tools of ruin. I never see myself use them. But I always wake up with the weight of it still in my hands. Like it came back with me. And the worst part? I enjoy it. I wake up calm. Peaceful. Fists clenched. Breathing slow and steady like I've just finished a sacred ritual. Sometimes there's blood under my fingernails. Wet. Sticky. Other times it's dried into the creases. There are no cuts on me. No wounds. Just that metallic stink on my sheets and the taste in my mouth like burnt pennies. I tried everything. Therapy. Medication. Journaling. Hypnosis. Isolation. My doctor said it was trauma. Psychosomatic cold sensitivity, he called it. Survivor's guilt. PTSD. Post-operative delusions. None of that explains the scar. Not the one across my chest. That's expected. I signed up for that. This one was on the inside of my left forearm. A thin, pale X healed over like it had been there for years. But it hadn't. I know my body. I know every freckle, every scar, every stupid mole. That X wasn't mine. Not before. That's when I went to an old friend, someone in medical billing. Someone with access to records. To transplant data. I begged him. I begged him to find the name of my donor. He said it was sealed. But a bottle of bourbon and a breakdown on his couch changed that. He pulled it up. Just a few notes, nothing with names. But I'll never forget the look on his face. Like something had gone rancid in the air. "Oh, shit," he whispered. "You're not gonna want to know this." But I did. I needed to. The name was redacted. But the profile wasn't. Convicted murderer. Torture. 9 confirmed victims. Multiple ages. Held them in a basement. Soundproofed. White tiles. Fluorescent lighting. Leather restraints. Just like my dreams. He turned himself in. No remorse. No plea. Just walked into a police station one morning and said, "My work is complete." He died on death row. No family to claim the body. But he'd signed the organ donor form. And his heart was still good. So now, it's mine. Things got worse after that. I started blacking out. Not sleepwalking. Not zoning out. Gone. I'd come to an alleys. In stairwells. Parking garages. Once in a supply closet, hands shaking, a box cutter in my grip and blood swirling in the sink. I told myself it was stress. Told myself I'd snap. That it was in my head. But I knew better. I started noticing the smells first. Bleach. Rust. Damp concrete. Following me. Clinging to me like a second skin. And then came the urges. I'd sit in my car outside grocery stores. Just watching. People. Their little routines. Their weaknesses. The way they checked their phones instead of their surroundings. The way they left their doors unlocked. The way they trusted the night. I'd imagine what they'd look like when they screamed. How they'd sound. What they'd say if I let them beg. One night I followed a woman for 7 blocks before I even realized what I was doing. I was 2 steps from her building when I snapped out of it. Hands clenched so hard my nails left half moons in my palms. I ran. Collapsed in the street. Threw up in a gutter. I swore I'd never do it again. But the next night, I dreamed of her face. I saw her strapped in that chair. I saw myself, it, leaning close, whispering something I couldn't hear. And I smiled. I went back to the hospital. Stormed into the transplant center. Found the surgeon who'd done the operation. I told him I wanted it out. The heart. I didn't care what it meant. He just smiled. A calm, smug kind of smile. "You're alive," he said. "That heart saved you." No. It replaced me. Then came the worst night. I woke up in my bathtub. Fully clothed. Soaked. A knife was resting on the tub's edge. Clean. Balanced. Like it had been placed there gently. My hands were covered in blood. My clothes were soaked with it. My mouth tasted like iron. There were splatters on the tile, smears on the door frame, footprints down the hall. The blood wasn't mine. I checked every inch of my body. Again. And again. And again. Not a scratch. I checked the news. Police reports. Nothing. No missing person. No break-ins. No body. Maybe he's smarter now. Maybe he's learning through me. I haven't slept since. I won't. Because he doesn't dream. He remembers. He relives. And now, so do I. Every flicker of the lights. Every scream. Every second in that room. It's like a film running in my veins. On a loop. Not a haunting. Not a possession. Not a voice in my head. Is beating inside me. He doesn't ask permission. He doesn't whisper. He moves. I tried to resist. I really did. I locked the knives away. I stopped going out after dark. I threw out the clothes that came back blooded. I deleted the dreams. Forced myself not to write. Not to remember. It didn't matter. is patient. He doesn't need me alert. He just needs me breathing. Sometimes I feel him waiting, like a hand just behind my ribs, resting, watching, biding his time. Last week, I woke up with fingerprints on my neck, my own hands, pressed hard, like I was trying to choke him out of me, but I couldn't. You can't kill something that's already dead. And he is dead, buried, burned, ashes scattered. But the heart survived. It remembered the rhythm. It remembered the thrill. And now it's mine. So last night, I gave in. I picked up the knife again. I didn't drop it this time. There was no hesitation, no trembling. My grip was firm, familiar, like coming home. I walked into the street, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel lost. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't sobbing. I wasn't cold. Not even a little. That's what scares me the most. Not the blood. Not the silence after the screams. Not even the faces that I know will visit me again, strapped to that chair in my dreams. It's the calm. The warmth. Like I've finally made peace with the thing inside me. Like I've stopped fighting. Because maybe I was never supposed to fight. Maybe this is who I was always meant to be. A second chance that wasn't mine. A life stolen and stitched together with someone else's nightmare. Is not haunting me. He is me. So if you're reading this, don't call the police. Don't try to help. Don't come looking. Because I won't be the one who answers the door. And if you hear footsteps behind you in a parking garage or a flicker of lights in an empty hallway, don't turn around. Just run. Because I've finally stopped feeling cold. And that means he's wide awake. We thought it was just a late-night road trip, but we found a town that doesn't exist. You ever have one of those moments where you're laughing with your friends, the road stretching endlessly ahead, music low in the background, and for a second, just 1 second, you feel like you've outrun time? That's what it felt like. We were 4 kids with no real responsibilities, no destination, and no idea that we were about to cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I had just turned 17, freshly armed with my graduated license and an aching desire to feel free. No more curfew. No more parents texting every hour. To celebrate, I pitched a spontaneous idea to my friends. Let's take a night drive into the Adirondacks. Just far enough to feel like we were escaping. Cody, my best friend since 5th grade, was instantly in. Tom, the impulsive wild card of the group, just grinned and threw his hoodie on. Sammy, the new freshman we'd taken under our wing, was eager to prove he could hang with the older guys. We left late, around 6:30 p.m. Later than we planned. The sky was painted with soft pastels, the sun starting to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows across the northway. The Adirondack Northway, Interstate 87, starts in Albany and cuts all the way to the Canadian border. But once you pass Lake George, it changes. The exits get sparse. The cell service vanishes. You start to feel like you're not just leaving the city, you're leaving the map. At first, it was perfect. Music up, windows down. We talked about everything. Girls, school, how much we hated AP classes. We joked about summer jobs and made ridiculous bets about who'd get into college first. Classic teenage stuff. But the deeper we drove, the darker it got, and the quieter. No street lights. No cars. Just the hum of the tires and the occasional flicker of deer eyes in the woods. Then, big. A glowing orange warning appeared on my dash. Please refuel. I hadn't even noticed how far we'd gone. Sammy pulled up Google Maps, and we realized we'd been driving north for nearly 3 hours. Over 250 miles from home. That knot in my stomach started to form, but Tom, as always, laughed it off. Dude, it's fine. There's gotta be a station nearby. Almost on cue, a blue sign appeared. Exit 39S, services available, New France. None of us had ever heard of New France. But in that moment, it didn't matter. It had gas. We pulled off. The exit ramp curved into a narrow, unlit road flanked by thick pine and silence. No houses. No lights. Just wilderness pressing in on both sides like it was trying to reclaim the pavement. Still, after about 3 miles, a small mobile station emerged out of the dark. 2 pumps. A squat little convenience store. Everything felt faded, like it had been there too long. We were the only car. I pulled up to the pump while Cody and Sammy stretched their legs. Tom, ever the bottomless pit, announced he was grabbing snacks and disappeared inside. We filled up quickly. I glanced at the price, cash only, but shrugged it off. I just wanted to get home. We waited in the car. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then 15. No Tom. Sammy tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. His stupid custom greeting echoed into the car. Hey, it's your favorite person. Leave a message if you're worthy. By the 20-minute mark, I was irritated. I got out and went inside, ready to drag him out by his hoodie. The store was off. The air was stale, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. A faint smell of burnt coffee hung in the air. But there was no cashier. No music. No TV. No one. Just rows of snacks and emptiness. I called out for Tom. Nothing. Then, the lights died. Everything. Pitch black. The kind of black where your breath gets caught in your chest and your ears strain for sound that never comes. Outside, I heard the car doors slam. I ran back and found Cody and Sammy pale as ghosts. Something followed you in, Cody whispered. It wasn't Tom. I was about to argue when a low, growling sound echoed from behind the building. Not animal. Not human. Just wrong. I slammed the gas. We peeled out. The tires kicked up gravel and I didn't look back. We drove for 15 minutes, but the ramp back to the interstate never came. Just trees. Trees that looked familiar but not quite. Sammy pulled out his phone. There's no New France here, he said, scrolling. Exit 39S doesn't exist. I told him to check again. He did. Same result. Exit 39N was listed. So was 39E. But no 39S. The place we had just been? Gone. Then I saw it. A figure walking alongside the road. Distant, but getting closer. I raised my phone and zoomed in. My heart stopped. It had Tom's face. No, worry. Like a mask. But everything else was wrong. The way it moved, too tall, limbs bending wrong, like a puppet animated by something that didn't understand anatomy. It walked with a twitch, like it was learning. Then it smiled. Not a human smile. A grotesque grin stretched too wide, teeth too square, eyes too flat. That's when it screamed. A guttural, inhuman shriek that made the car vibrate. I floored it. We hit the thing. There was a sickening thud, but I never slowed down. I couldn't. Inside the car, no one spoke. Sammy was crying. Cody just kept whispering Tom's name over and over. I glanced at the dashboard. 90 miles of range left. That didn't make sense. We'd filled the tank 30 minutes ago. I was sure we had over 300 miles. And then I noticed the time. 10:30 p.m. Still. Same as when we'd left the gas station. We had stopped moving through time. The road twisted again. The forest grew denser. I pulled over, barely keeping my hands steady. Sammy had 1 bar of service, just enough to load an old travel guide. That's when we knew we weren't just lost. We were somewhere else. Then footsteps. We turned. Tom was standing at the tree line. Or something that looked like him. But he was too tall. His arms too long. Skin stretched like wax, his face flickering like a faulty projector. Eyes glassy. Lifeless. I asked it to let you go, he said. It said yes. But I have to stay. We were frozen. He continued. Don't come back. Not for me. Not for anyone. This place, it was never ours. And I'm the price for our trespassing. He handed me a folded map, yellowed, creased, damp. It felt old. Real. Like it had weight. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. He turned and walked back into the woods. We never saw him again. We followed the map. It took us down roads that didn't exist on GPS trails that looked abandoned for decades. But we trusted it. It felt like something ancient had given us one chance, and this was it. And then, out of nowhere, a sign. Dark blue. White letters. 87. We hit the ramp like it was salvation. We didn't stop until we saw Albany's streetlights again. We got home just before dawn. Our parents yelled at us. Grounded us. But nothing about Tom. No one remembered him. Not at school. Not his family. Not even in photos. Where his face once was, just a gap. A space where someone should be. Even the playlists he made? Gone. He wasn't just missing. He'd been erased. A week later, an envelope arrived. No stamp. No name. Just one handwritten line. Stay out of our territory.
My name's Chuck, and in the fall of 1996, right after the pledge, Ed gets fired for us not learning fast enough. Something dramatized and something that happens for every single pledge class, regardless of how well they're doing with retaining dumb dates and facts. Tommy and I were the ones selected here. Tommy was the better drinker. I'd been doing the best on the weekly tests at lineup, and they immediately spouted out a super long quote to us and then asked us what time it was. If we couldn't recite the quote back perfectly, we took a shot of Jameson from a nearly full handle in front of us. The quote itself was challenging, but the hard part was trying to memorize it before the alcohol hit our systems. Tommy got it surprisingly fast, in a little under 10 tries, while I hadn't even gotten through the first half. You can leave now, Tommy. I know you've got class tomorrow, or you can stay here. And every time you go, that's another chance for Chuck to hear the full quote, Kurt said with a dark gaze to his eyes. I reckon I'll stay then, Tommy said solemnly, giving me a knowing glance before rattling off the quote once more. I got close, for whatever that was worth, but as the alcohol sunk in, both of us became sloppier and sloppier until eventually that handle was gone. Two of us had drank it and it was gone. No one ever fucks it up this bad. Kurt seemed furious as he reached for another handle to put up on the table. Thankfully, the other brother stopped him, but I could see in his eyes this was genuine anger. I don't remember much of it worse as the weeks went on. They'd wake us up at random hours, make us run laps around the house in our underwear at sunrise, force us to recite the Greek alphabet while they dumped ice water on us. I nearly dropped out when during one event one of the brothers announced loudly he was going to piss on us. Take your pick. Pledge. It seemed crazy, we were just pledges to them. What was he worried about? Still, something had shifted in the process now. They didn't joke as much, and their eyes had this intensity that made me feel like I was being watched, judged. The first night at the lodge was brutal. They split us into groups and made us compete in these sadistic games, carrying buckets of rocks across the field, blindfolded, while they tripped us or sprayed us with hoses. If your group lost, you get penalties, which meant more drinking or running until you collapsed. When two teams were eliminated, they had to each pick a member to take a hit in the balls from Kurt, who for the course of Hell Week had retitled himself Hayes Master General. Tommy and I were in the same group, and we kept each other going. He'd whisper stupid jokes when the brothers weren't looking, and I'd help him up when he stumbled. We were a team, you know? I thought we'd make it through together. They had us staying in a large closet more or less, with a table set up in the center meant to take up as much space as possible, and 18 chairs placed around it just tight enough to ensure no one could find a space to lay down. We were allowed to do schoolwork and study fraternity information, but nothing else. No going back to our dorms, no going out for food, and even conversations were frowned upon, forcing us to resort to hushed whispers over the sound of a constantly blasting song, The End by the Doors, that we usually got away with. I learned down the line that newly initiated brothers from the year before were supposed to be finding excuses to sneak in to bring us food throughout the week, but the guys we had were either lazy or hated us. I think at one point we got a bag of chips. For our real dinners, brothers, I think about Tommy. I think about the choice I made, the knife in my hand, the blood on the stone. I wonder if I could have saved him, if I could have run and never looked back. But I didn't. I chose this life, and I paid the price. So did Tommy. And the worst part? If I had to do it again, I'm not sure I'd choose any different. Brotherhood, man.